can choose, right?
Yes, we are live. Lovely. So thanks everyone. Thanks and good morning everyone, and welcome to the second episode of our Tech 312 live streams. My name is Carlo, and I work at 312 as an agile coach. And our title today is Office, sometimes, the present and future of tech work. And guess what? We're going to talk about what the title says. So I'm in a quite amazing company today, and I'm really very much looking forward to hear from our guests about this topic, about how is this gonna work, this more blended way of working that we have started to experience so powerfully this year. So this clear shift in terms of how many hours do we spend in a company office versus how much do we contribute remotely. So please welcome Amy. She's from Phoenix International and joins us from Kampala, Uganda. We also have my friend Steve, who's based, I guess he is in London, as I am, and he works at Blumenwild. Also my friend Richard from the Circle Line, also in the UK. Not sure he's in London just now, but somewhere in the UK. And Cesare, he's connected from the beautiful Verona in Italy. And Simon, and he's my CTO here at 312. I guess he's based in London or somewhere near London. And yeah, of course, we're going to hear from them. And just want to kind of confirm some of them work in companies like 312, where being in the office and collaborating face-to-face was the norm before the whole COVID crisis. And other of us are actually been working in fully remote companies for a while. So I'm really keen to see their views as well, of course. We have set up a Slido to receive questions, and we covered definitely some of them today. You'll find the link in the there in the Eventbrite page and in the YouTube description as well. Please do ask questions there. That's really it from me. So I'm going to hand over the virtual microphone to Rui, who's like me, an agile coach at 312, and he's going to facilitate our round table, or better said, our conversation cafe this morning.
Yes, thank you, Carlo, and thank you everyone for being here. And I will not waste our precious time, so I will start making the questions and let's have some fun together. So, and I will start asking you, and Amy, please, you can start. So to start, I would love to have a brief round of context setting about how large is your company, what industry does it operated, how many offices, and what was the approach of the remote working before the COVID-19?
Great. So I'm Amy, Senior Director of Software and Data at Phoenix International. So we have around 5,000 employees globally and about 9 offices in our 6 operating markets in Africa, China, where we have our manufacturing, San Francisco, where we do some hardware design, and then a couple of European offices as well. And so we're kind of used to collaborating internationally, some of us. But other than that, generally not really a large kind of working from home policy. Within software and data, we're 32. We were 32 people before COVID. And we're all based in Kampala except for one person in Paris. So lots of face-to-face, some people working from home, but very casually and not organized at all.
Thank you, Amy. So Richard.
Yeah, well, we're at the other end of the scale. So I work for a company called Circle Line. We are all about basically changing the way people get access spoken therapies. We are completely 100% remote. We're a startup in our first year. We're less than 10 people. And when we started kind of working together, it was a very conscious decision to not have offices. We used to get together once a month in person, but since COVID, that's dropped away. So we've just replaced that with an evolving meeting that goes on for a couple of hours where we will share, but the concept's kind of the same. So we've always been working remotely, and we're trying to build a culture around that rather than trying to adapt something else.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, really interesting because you have different sizes of companies, different ways of working. Yeah, good start. So let's see, Stephen, please.
Cool. So yeah, I'm the VP Engineering at Bloom & Wild. We're Europe's largest direct-to-consumer flower company, and we're about 120 people, of which there's about 25 at the moment in tech. We've been pre-COVID, with the exception of one 3-day period where our office flooded. We've always been an office-based company, and there's a smattering of remote people. We had previously one in tech. But our culture has been very, very office-based. And so it's been a very kind of interesting journey to adapt that, as we've obviously all been remote over the past few months.
Thank you. And please, Cesare.
Hi, everyone. I work for an American company with Workwave. We have a few offices since Workwave has grown historically by acquiring. We have the main office in New Jersey, one in North Carolina. We used to have one in St. Louis. We have one in Hawaii and one in Italy, where I work. We're around 300 people. Even though we have several offices, we used to be very office-centric, apart from Italy. We're Italian, we tend to do as we please, as you may imagine. Apart from that, I also own a company which organizes technical events, mostly conferences, workshops, and some training. We are 7 people. We are spread out over northern Italy, and we have always been remote. So that's a bit of a different context.
Yeah. Thank you. And for last but not least, Simon.
Hi, so I'm Simon. I'm the CTO of Treatwell. We're a marketplace for hair and beauty services. The company is about just north of 500 people. We operate in 11 markets with, I think, somewhere in the region of 7 offices. From a tech perspective, we've always had a pretty strong preference for co-located teams and office-based teams. We've operated a fairly sort of liberal approach to working in the office, though. So if people need to be not in the office for any reason, we're very accepting of that, and we let people, but it's by exception. So by default, we expect, up until this point, we have expected people to be in the office and work with their colleagues. And we thought that was the best way to work. There's now a question over that.
Yeah, probably we will talk about this in the following minutes, I'm sure. So now we all know each other and understand the context. Let's start with the interesting questions. So if we try to anticipate some of the risks about this new blended setup that COVID brings to us, what I would see on your risk logs, and we can start with Cesare, please.
Yes, so before COVID, if I had to think about issues with remote people, I wouldn't feel like it was much of an issue, because half of us was already working remotely 4 days out of 5 each week. We used to meet once a week, almost everyone, usually everyone in the office, because we like to chat, we like to eat together. The culture is very friendly in the Italian office. So not the risks, but the issues actually were problems in communication, chit-chats at the coffee machine about work were happening, even though we tried our best not to do that. So that is the biggest thing, basically making sure that everyone was on top, because we are a few very small teams, 2 to 3 people. And when it happens that someone in front end talks to someone in back end, the rest of those teams that are remote know nothing about that. So we've been trying to document everything. And luckily it happened before COVID struck. So when it happened, we were almost ready, we thought, or at least I thought. Then I found out it was not that good. We were not as good as I thought. So now I am thinking, and the team also is pushing towards, again, communication, but async communication. So we are basically working as if we are in the office, mostly. So many calls, many chats on Slack. We need to make them to lower the number of synchronous communication, because that's making working hard.
Yes, thank you for sharing, Cesare. Yeah, really interesting. So let's see a company with more or less the same size. So let's hear from Simon, please.
So I have a slightly different point of view, which is I think the biggest risk is that we falsely conclude that the thing that we're doing today is successful. So we're all sitting there, you know, generally speaking, the people I talk to about this are surprised at how well remote working is working. And I think it is working for now, but my worry is that there are things in place, the social capital that we've all built up from being in offices and understanding how these things work, that is now being carried forward, and we don't fully understand the long-term impact of remote work. The other thing that I think that we're spending a lot of time thinking about is how remote work happens at a team level. So when there are small groups of people working together, I think it can be incredibly effective if you implement things like, you know, asynchronous communication, if you get really good at documenting the decisions that you're making and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's going to take a lot longer for us to realize what happens to organizations that are used to a lot of interaction between teams, a lot of interaction between quite different teams, and they rely on the sort of serendipitous, spontaneous connections between really different parts of their organizations. And I just don't think we know from the 3 or 4 months that we've had doing it so far what the actual impact of not having those relations is and how to replace that in a remote world. So yeah, so my biggest, to recap, my biggest risk is that we are going to jump to conclusions a little bit early.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair, and I think communication probably is the key. From your side, Hami.
Yeah, so I think there's obviously a few risks about like accountability and some kind of operational risks, just specifically around how people are working, you know, how can they troubleshoot online and things like that. But more importantly, I think it presents a challenge of equality. So one of the things that obviously is highlighted is the difference in lifestyle that people have. You know, if you do have children, if you live with dependents, or if you're in a more challenging living situation, it's obviously going to be much harder for you to separate your home life and work. It may just be hard for you to get the respite that you literally need from your home situation, you know, and then people who don't have dependents. And also we're talking about different job grades as well, like what can you afford? So those things are really highlighted. And we've definitely seen that across our team. You know, some people really don't have an adequate workspace, and there's just literally no option for them. And that puts them at a disadvantage suddenly when they were already in a disadvantaged group. So that I think is a definite problem. And you also create factions between the team. Like we have teams like software who can work from home because of the nature of their role, but we also have large call centers in each of our operating markets. And we did try and find a way for call center agents to work from home, but you can imagine that's very challenging and really affects your quality score if you're on the phone and then suddenly your child or your husband or whoever just comes into the picture. It looks very different to us having a conversation and that happening. You can forgive me, but a customer isn't necessarily going to be as understanding. So there's definitely, it presents some problems there about equality. And then just the final thing I think is how it impacts the type of people that can get ahead. Right. And I'm kind of on the fence about this one. I think those like water cooler chats, that suits some specific type of people, right? Going for coffee, having lunch. Only some people do that really. And lots of people have found success in their career because of that. So having everyone distributed kind of removes that, which does maybe allow people who are a bit more shy to get ahead if the leader of the meeting or the facilitator of the meeting is being purposefully inclusive to every single person that's on the call, because some people won't want to interrupt. They just don't feel comfortable doing that. So I think there's an opportunity to actually bring a little bit more equality of opportunities there, but definitely loads of issues and risks around that.
Yeah, really good point, Amy. I to be honest, make me think what you said. It was really good point. So Richard, please.
Yeah, so we as an organisation, it kind of looks like a team. So we have the opposite thing where we don't have this. It's probably easier for us all to get in one place, which is great. It's allowed us to operate the way we have been doing, but we're aware already of those scaling issues. So when we got together, we had a day where we all got together in person and we got to know each other really, really well. And that was that created those relationships, kind of warmed up those relationships right from the very beginning. And then somebody else joins and they didn't have that. And it's like, well, how do you recreate that now? And you've kind of done it. It was a thing that happened. It was a moment and it worked for us. But then how do you make that inclusive to somebody else? So our risk is really about, as we grow, how do we create a culture that's welcoming and inclusive in an online world? And you don't end up with multiple tiers in your culture. So it's like, this is the old guard. They've been here from the beginning. They have these relationships. And then these people are different. They came in later. They treat differently. And so certainly that element of onboarding, how do new people join? How do they feel a part of? What do we need to do? And it feels much more it's not a tools thing. It's a people thing. It's like a culture thing. And so it's probably a lot harder. It's not like you can create a set of rules. It's something you have to look at, assess, and go, we've done something wrong. How do we fix it? So I think that'd be my biggest thing. We've kind of got a different set of problems, but we're aware very much of that scaling thing. If we took what we got now and added 100 people, it wouldn't work. Simple as that. Yeah. So I'm glad we haven't got the problems that some of you have got. We've got very different ones. Having said that, because we're so small, we leverage that. And when we're talking to customers, I've done loads of customer chats where I've had a child next to me and I've said, hey, I've got a child hassling me for toast, so I'm sorry about the bad typing. And that person has kind of sensed that little bit of humanity in that, saying, hey, yeah, I've got a child as well and they're screaming for something. I'll send you an email. So sometimes it's interesting. We've by being a little bit more human with our clients, they see us as human and we have a different sort of dialogue with them. So I don't know, it's kind of maybe that dropping the barrier a little bit has kind of helped us with some of our clients, seeing us in a slightly different way.
Yes, I understand what you mean, because at this point, for example, since Corona, I met the entire family from Carlo. And it was amazing. Yeah, really, really, really great. And Stephen, please, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess just to add on top of what the others have said, I worry a little bit about engagement, and it feels like we started all this with very high engagement, very high engagement credit, effectively, and we've been burning that down, and that's slowly but surely almost like withdrawing that from the bank. And I wonder how long that can last for. Even when one does new activities to re-engage people, they're very, very different. And they're to a group of people who are used to being engaged in a very co-located way. So it might bump that credit up a wee bit, but I do fear the longer this goes on, then the lower that engagement will become. I think the thing that actually concerns me the most is not actually the current situation, it's what happens next. So I worry that we're going to think that we've absolutely nailed this remote working thing, and then some of us are going to go back to the office, and it's completely different. And all of those issues with kind of forgotten people on the phone, difficulties with dial-in tools that don't work. If we don't plan for that sort of stuff, we're going to see exactly those sorts of issues coming up, and we need to view that as a completely new phase. Being co-located was a phase, being all remote was a phase, and being a mixture is a completely new phase, and we need to plan for that in a completely different way.
Yeah, makes totally sense. Thank you all. And yeah, for now, I think because it's live, right? So let's talk about money and what is the strategy that your companies are having about how are you expecting to spend your money? So if you have thought about this already, should we expect more money spent on tools? Some of you highlight this, that maybe it's important. And how about investments in training, or let's say online difficult conversations? So how do you think it will be the best way of spend your money to at least give people and make people comfortable with this new way of working? So, and Richard, please.
So money's it's an interesting for us. I'm not sure it's a tooling thing. I think all the tools feel kind of the same. They've got similar feature sets. I know there's a big arms race in like better audio quality and all that sort of thing, but we've used a collection of them. I think more the problem is that there's such a collection of tools. It's like, okay, so what are we on Meet? Are we on Zoom? Are we on Slack? Which one? It's more of a, oh my God, which one do we use now? I mean, usually got a collection of ones. So I don't think that's the problem. I think more from I wouldn't say it's a money thing, but maybe it has an impact. It's like time. Everything takes a little bit longer. Certainly decision making is so much harder when you've kind of got like a remote thing. So if you want to work at pace, trying to get a decision. So one of the biggest things we have is like, what should we build next? What's the right thing to build? And just kind of getting everybody on board with that has been tricky. It feels like unless you've got everybody there, it's like they don't have the same dialogue, they don't have the same investment in it. And so I think maybe that is that kind of speed thing. So maybe it's like we're actually talking about time. It takes longer to do things like this, and we should be accepting of that. And where I think the money needs to go is actually with accepting that things take longer. And actually, if this is a people thing, it's not individuals. It is individuals. It's everybody needs the same treatment. It's not like managers can sort this out. It's like everybody participating and everybody going back to the engagement thing. It's really hard. Yeah, that bank of like, this is brilliant, I'm working from home. And then 2 months in, you're like, oh my God, I'm working from home. It feels completely different. So yeah, for us, it's been very different. We're still kind of buoyant. We still feel like we're kind of, everybody's still engaged, but we do have those moments where it's like, oh my God, haven't we talked about this before? Why are we going over this again? And you kind of have to repeat things. And it's like, what is the solution to that? How do you you can't get 400 people on a Slack call. You can't get 400 people heading in the right direction. So it comes much more down to company culture, autonomy, trusting people to go in the right direction. Because you kind of said, this is where we're going. You work out how to get there. Are we ready to do that as organizations, especially a lot more hands off? I think a lot of we're working remotely. There was a lot of trust. Why didn't we do it before? Did we trust people to just get on with it at home? I'm not sure. Do we trust them now? Probably a little bit more. People did just get on with it and do stuff. They had a reason to do
it. Thank you, Richard. Stephen, please. What are your thoughts about?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a training investment needed. I think in terms of particularly, I don't know, as a manager, the way that I would hold, for example, a more challenging conversation with an employee face to face is not the way I would necessarily do it remotely. Or if I tried the same strategies, I don't think it would be quite so successful. So I think it's really, really important that we do invest and we do call out that separate training that is required and support that is required. Also, particularly to managers or those who might be in a more isolated situation, doing something like that actually gives them that support and establishing those support networks and establishing kind of managers groups and kind of safe spaces effectively, I think is you need to replicate what would be can I just grab you for a coffee and run through my problem with you sorts of chats that you can have when you're co-located, that you obviously you can't do remotely. And it's almost like a really big barrier then to saying, hey, I've got a problem and I just want to chat through it. So I think that's really important. I think investing as well and really calling out the need to prioritize support for people who are struggling, and whether that is through offering and counselling and coaching and more around wellness, I think is really super important. And that's certainly what we've been really trying to focus on when the teams have gone remotely. And then there's one thing that's kind of really kind of close to me that I think is super important. I know all the tools work, but I really worry that we're if we don't invest in simple things like chairs, for example, we are going to be in a situation, the more people work remote, where we effectively end up with a group of individuals who are all going to have back problems and are going to be off long-term sick. So there's one thing like make sure everyone's got the laptop, they've got the internet connection, make sure everyone's got a comfortable working space as they did have when they were in the office. Otherwise, I think we're storing up a problem there too.
Yes, thank you, Richard. And yes, this is something that we understand that, and I think Amy talked about that. Some people don't have the proper conditions to work from home, and the companies will have to at some point. Maybe it will be something that companies have to invest some money to improve the conditions for work. Simon, please. What are your thoughts?
So I think this is all about money, right? It's probably not in the way that the question was asked, but I think that remote work is going to be all about money ultimately. So, from different perspectives, it may be good or bad. So with remote work, what we're going to see is that people will have a lot more freedom in where they live. They might be able to move outside of super expensive urban geographies, right? So, imagine in the UK, there's the cost of living in London is off the charts. So what we might see is people moving to places where they can get a better quality of life. So in the UK, again, from a social perspective, that would be great to see a redistribution of wealth from the southeast to the rest of the country, right? So amazing. But if we think of all of these companies who have supported the idea of co-located teams, generally, if you look at the history of companies building software products, they either, build their own teams in-house or they outsource to some low-cost center, right? So, and the people who built in-house generally believe they did that because they believed that co-located teams worked better. Right? They knew their customers better, they knew the business better, they produced better software. So if in this remote work, we're discovering that we can actually replace those things, then all of a sudden you're going from this idea of like, it's, better for the UK workforce to be distributed. There isn't going to be a UK workforce anymore, right? There's then going to be a global workforce. So what does that then mean? Then, it comes into training and development. That was a question, right? So, companies don't develop people and invest in people just because it's good for society. They do it because that is the best way to get access to talent. And all of a sudden, if you were competing in London for talent with the banks, with the big internet companies, you have to find the thing, how you're going to get access to talent. And that might be through developing junior people. If you can suddenly hire talent across the globe because you're remote, then where's the incentive to invest? So one of my big concerns of all of this is it's going to be great for the more senior people who have the experience, who have the skills. I really worry about the people starting their careers. Going back to the first point about the interactions that you get in the office, right? So many people start a career path. They develop skills from being people, in teams and learn stuff from people around them. But there's a huge number of people who discover opportunities in a parallel path or somewhere else in the business. They're just not going to get access to that anymore. So, yeah, I think money is going again, and this is the big picture. Like the short-term question is, do you buy people chairs? Are you storing up a huge amount of business for chiropractors? Like that's the short-term issue. But longer term, how is this going to change how work is done, and what impact is that going to have on all of us? And it's all going to be about money. Like ultimately, companies care about money. So
yes, thank you, Simon. Interesting points. Amy, please, have more to add.
So the first thing I was going to say was very related to the whole chair thing, so I won't go over that, but that was the first thing we did to make sure everyone had chairs. The biggest financial impact that COVID has had on software and data teams specifically is that it has opened up professional development opportunities that were just not available to us before. We have a group of software engineers, data scientists, data engineers who are living in Kampala. There are not any massive meetups or communities. Like, you have to travel to Europe, you have to travel to North America. And, our budget is relatively limited. We're trying to offer a very inclusive service to people living in very rural areas in Africa. So we have to be very careful about where we spend. But I was always presented with this problem, how can I really put my engineers in a great position to grow in any respect that they want to? You have to be spending $1,000 for them to go somewhere. The course is extremely expensive. It costs at least $500 to just fly out of Africa from basically wherever you are. So this has been amazing for that. So many people have now taken professional development opportunities that they wouldn't have had before, courses, communities, all of that being online is so, so helpful for an industry in a region like here. So that's been the biggest impact on us now, I think. And as you said, having a global workforce, that's really exciting for me, because it was really hard to grow this team here. And so many people said that it wouldn't be possible. And other people in the kind of Pego Solar space have moved their software into Europe or wherever, because they said they tried Africa and it didn't work. And, I just didn't buy that. And, but it has been hard because there's no community. And so allowing people to go online and allowing people to be from anywhere, it is just incredible for all of the talent that exists here. And if somebody from Uganda, Kenya, Ghana, wherever can work for a company and not require a work permit and have to get a visa, it's life-changing.
Yes, that's for sure. A lot of opportunities for companies and for people. And yes, Cesare, please.
Sorry, wrong shortcut. I saw something similar to what Simon was saying, because also in Italy there's a very different wealth situation between northern and southern Italy, and I'm seeing that finally people from southern Italy don't need to move to northern Italy, leave the families, which is a big thing in Italy, to be able to get a satisfying job, especially in technology. You basically have to move to Milan or some other places in northern Italy. That's helping to distribute work all over the country, which is a very good thing. On the other hand, one of the reasons why I always try to push for remote work is that around Verona, there are lots of very good technical people, but perhaps not exactly the type I need. And if I have to gather everyone in the office once a week to be able to keep our culture, to be able to keep us as friendly as we are with new people and between us, then I cannot reach people from southern Germany, which is just behind the Alps. Now that will help us. Luckily, our budget for to hire people is higher than Italy. It can compete probably with some companies in London or Berlin, but still we could be able to use the money we have to hire very good people just a bit far away. And I'd like to also stress a bit of difference between global companies and global workers and remote workers, because it's a lot easier if you hire within a couple of hours, 3 to 4 hours from your time zone. So yeah, the size of the area that where you can hire people is a lot bigger, but it's still not global. I have one team, which is one person in Italy, one person in New Jersey, 6 hours apart. They do a wonderful job, but probably they are really good at that. I couldn't expect all of my teammates to be able to do the same. It's just a personal thing. One last thing about money, if I have some more seconds, is that we have a huge office for historical reasons. We can have like 25 people in the office. We are usually 6 to 8, and I'm expecting, because some people want to go back in the office, I'm expecting to have 4 to 5 people, 3 probably each day, and 3 more wanting to be in the office a couple days a week. I'm one of those. I feel very good at home. I have my cats. I have a beautiful view outside my window. So I don't have a good chair, so I have to do something about that. But still, I feel very comfortable working at home. One thing, I've just started to talk about this. We are HR and finance, but we will probably move into a smaller office, and we'll have to find a way to gather everyone, probably once a month. I did a poll between people who lives near Verona and people who lives outside Verona, and not surprisingly, who lives farther away wants to be in the office less. Who lives in Verona wants to be able to go in the office when they want. So we'll need anyway an office also to be able to welcome people from the US 3 to 4 times a year. Some people from the US come into the Italian office, we go the other side. So anyway, we will need somewhere. But we will probably save quite a bit of money that we need to understand how to use, like twice a year. We gather together for 5 days. We do something to keep that feeling of being the same group, not a group of individuals, as I think Steven said earlier.
Thank you. So we'll try to do, I will pass the microphone to Carlo again, and we'll try to answer one question. From
So we got a few questions coming in from Slido, and so we will not be able to answer all of them in the live stream. What we'll do, we're gonna take them offline and post them possibly as comments in the YouTube stream and maybe on LinkedIn as well. But there is one thing I want to share with the group, and then I'll let Rui kind of moderate the conversation. But it is a sort of a merge of some of the questions which are coming, and you briefly touched on this already. So it's kind of, so individuals have different preferences, right? Some of us do want to go back to the office. Some of us are really keen to keep working from home. So how do you see it in terms of like, what should the company strategy be? Should you decide one thing, or should you allow for the free things? Yeah. Or and it's more like a team-based or local decision. Yeah. So I need to go back to Rui to moderate the question.
Thank you, Carlo. So yes, this is, and I will try to merge, and I will ask you to be brief if you can, because some of the things, as Carlo was saying, you already mentioned. So I will try to merge the two questions I had here.
Sorry very much, Rui. Sorry to
yes.
Yeah, just let them maybe answer this one that I asked. So what's their view in terms of like, what should the company do? Should they pick one of the free flavors, or should they allow for different flavors to coexist?
Yeah, so to give a chance to Simon to start, because I never chose him to start, so I will give him the preference for this one, okay?
I also strongly suspect this has come from a tree dweller, so based on the name. Hi, Anto. So again, I think we're in this period where we don't really know how this is going to play out. Like, we've got certain expectations or understand. We think that this is working, and it might change over the coming months. So I think the important thing whilst we go through this period is that we need to support all of our employees and the people who joined our company because they liked being in teams and being around people and the social interaction. It's really, really important that we provide a mechanism that they can continue to get that. Equally, for the people who have discovered that they love working from home, we need to provide a mechanism for that. But the superset of all of that is that we need to respect each other's wants and desires. So everybody is going to have to compromise. So at Treatwell, I think, and certainly in my teams, we'll be looking at for this interim period. When I say interim, it could last, quite a long time. But whilst we discover the true impact of remote working, we're going to try our best to let the teams figure out and put the onus on the teams to figure out how they're going to work, but with a strong guidance that they need to consider the desires and needs of all of the people within those teams, right? If we get super polarized about this, it's going to fall apart. Like, we have to remember that we're a team. We're trying to work together to achieve things together. If we, start to try and, optimize for one group of people, it's going to fall apart pretty quickly. So that's my answer.
Yes, thank you.
I hope that was okay.
Yeah, we will receive feedback for sure. So, Amy, from your side, what is your point of view on this one?
Yeah, super interesting. Something that we've kind of been talking about within the company even before COVID, especially around the global team. So the headquarters are currently in Uganda because this was our first and biggest market. But now that we're in 6 markets in Africa, there's a lot of contention around the fact that the global team are here because are they making biased decisions, not only based on the largest market, but also just where they're co-located, where we have these like legacy relationships and stuff. And I've always been a big proponent of having the global team work wherever they want, as long as it's in an operating market. And so generally, I think like a company just has a responsibility to think about what is important, like what is important for their employees in terms of what they need to be able to succeed at their role, right? And one of the major things for us is being close to the customer. One of the things I asked my team for their feedback on working from home, just in preparation for this panel. One of the things that came up repeatedly was the fact that they can't go to the field anymore and see the customers. And that's obviously for like users, for software, and also just going to a customer's house and like seeing them using the system and everything is one of the most fulfilling and amazing things that you can do, and just reconnects you with the whole mission and everything, So I think a company just needs to get their leadership together. They need to really critically evaluate like what is important for our employees to be able to do, like what do they need to do to succeed, for them to succeed and for us to succeed. You analyze those criteria basically, and you make a rule around that. And within a team, you might have like slight variation, but I think consistency is really important, so that you have fairness across the board, and you're not having like individual leaders, own personal opinions be too impactful on someone's day to day. And if it starts to be a problem, right? If you start to get feedback from everyone that they hate it and this isn't working, then it's your responsibility as a leadership group to change the policy. But I think it should be something that applies to everyone.
Okay.
Where possible.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Cesare, from your side, what's your thoughts about this?
Well, not much to add, but one thing is that now that we were forced to trust our employees during this period because we had no other way to have them work, probably this trust must come, if it wasn't yet, must become part of the culture. And using trust, basically, we need to decide to be able to do the best thing for all of our employees, because, as said, there will be competing preferences. We will need to have a lot more trust, or a lot of trust in general, to be able to take good decisions and be able to work well.
Thank you. And I will left Richard for the end on this one because he has a different. He is remote, so maybe he will have a different thoughts about that or another approach. So I will pass the word to Stephen now, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of build on what everyone else has said, we've been discussing this a lot in the leadership team at Bloom and Wild, and I think some principles are important. I think being aware that some teams will find working remotely easier than others, I think is important. Kind of building on, I think, what Amy said earlier in terms of tech versus say like your customer services team. I think that's really important. But I think also what's really important is everyone's context, every individual's context and problems are different. And so where we are at the moment is when we open up our office, it will be effectively smaller. And attendance will start off optionally, and because some people can travel in a more safe way, some people don't have dependents who are maybe shielding or maybe at greater risk. And for as long as this current situation goes on, which I think we don't know when this is going to stop, I think there's nothing more we can do than say, okay, it's up to you, and then get the teams, as Simon said, to effectively figure out within some boundaries how they can remain productive and they can remain engaged.
Yes, thank you. And Richard.
I just played the opposite game. Since we haven't got an office, what would happen if we did have an office, and how that would change things. And I think it's actually the blended that causes the most amount of problems operationally. It's really hard. I've facilitated groups where you've got a group of people in an office and a couple of remote people. And it's like the remote people have like a handicap immediately for being able to interact with people. And it's much easier if you're all remote because you've all got the same handicap. So I kind of like went, well, that's kind of interesting. So we'd actually introduce some of these problems by having an office. But I think the biggest thing for me is if I chose, where would you put it? It's like you place an office and you're like saying the people who are best working for my company will be within 1.5 hours travel of this place, wherever you choose it to be. And I kind of going to that open, like much more open opportunity, more people, where could you recruit from, what kind of people, different people from different economic backgrounds, different places. That feels a lot more freeing for me as a business. And I'd love to see that leveraged actually as an opportunity for us as a business to grow faster, probably a little bit leaner and in a very different way. So I kind of looked at it from the other way saying, well, I can't think of how I would design an office. I like the way it is now, but I also can't rule out like different people working different ways. So the biggest thing for us is we'd be finding people who want to work the way we do. And we don't have that problem that we would split people. I mean, it's like a massive problem that Simon was describing. You've got a group of people and you want to do the best for them. And yeah, you've got to kind of work out, everybody's got to adapt. So it's a really difficult one. I suppose we've got the different one, which is like, how do we build that from the start? It's a very different sort of thing. If you're just saying from the outset, this is the way we work, if you love it, come and join us, that feels a lot easier. But could it change? Yeah, absolutely. What happens if you start finding actually little fragments of people getting together in very small locales and they almost like create a little team, but they get together? I'd love to see that. That'd be brilliant. It'd be like, you get together however you want to get together, going back to Simon's thing of you make it work. How can we support you in you doing your best work? So in the future, who knows what it will look like for us.
If I could just dive in, there's a key point that Richard sort of alluded to. So I was very vague in my answer. I was, I wanted to support the individuals and I wanted teams to figure it out. But there is something that Richard's comment has made me think that I'm very not vague on, and I think is really important. In the blended model, I think that it is important that you blend working remotely and working together, where the team is 100% aligned at doing the same one of those two options at the same time. So a team might choose to work 2 days in the office. If that's the case, the whole team does the same 2 days in the office, because then that gives that provides that interaction for the people who need it, and it provides the opportunity for focus and all the things that you get from working alone remotely. The worst possible outcome is a blended team where everybody is operating independently. So the people who need interaction, they might go to the office and discover they're essentially working remotely because they're the only one in the office, right? And that's just not effective for anybody.
Yes, makes totally sense. So, and because the Slido questions are popping in and are much better than the ones I had prepared, I will pass again the word for Carlo, and he will.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was very proud of the questions we prepared, but I'm very happy to skip a couple of them to cover at least one. There's probably one we're going to manage to cover from the Slido, and as I said, we'll find a way to answer the others offline and post the answers, at least from some of our guests. So I do want to share this. This comes from Joao, so thanks for asking this. If a magic vaccine wipes COVID-19 from the face of Earth, would you keep the work from home policies?
Yes, feel free to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll hand it over again to you to facilitate the conversation.
Yeah. Because it's the last one, I will give you the chance to speak, and let's see how it works.
So I'll go if nobody else wants to.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think you need to divorce entirely the current pandemic working arrangement from what is going on in the future. I just think so much, like they're just so entirely different that it's impossible to think about what your policies will be in the context of where you're not in control, basically. The priorities are entirely different. So the priority now is all about people's safety. It's about people feeling secure. It's all of those, and you can't, like, anything that you do that threatens that would be irresponsible. But post-pandemic, when we get our magic vaccine, fingers crossed, I think work will change, and I think we will. We've learned a huge amount from this. We've learned that some people are so much more effective being able to concentrate, being able to get their head down. But we've also learned that people suffer as well, right? And there are people who need to get away from their families, and they need, not to have the kids climbing their office chair leg, if you've got an office chair. And so our policies will have to change. We're definitely going to be more accepting of remote working. We've seen the positives, we've seen the negatives. Something will change. Exactly how that will be, again, there will probably be guidelines, but it'll be down to the individual teams to figure it out. So if you've got a team of people who don't have, working from home challenges, they don't have kids who are interrupting them, they've got a good space to work, they're that way inclined, then sure, they should optimize for that and spend more time working remotely. If you've got, conversely, a team of people who really struggle to work remotely, you should give them the freedom to come into the office. Again, it's a bit of a cop-out, but we should I often talk about analogies with football teams. You've got a bunch of players, you play a system that suits the players, right? That's how you win matches. So the team should find the system that suits the players. And I think it would be somewhat arrogant for the management team or the leadership team to come up with one solution and suggest that this is the thing that's going to work universally for everybody, every team, every country, every environment.
Yes. Thank you, Simon. Anyone wants to add anything else on this one? Amy, please.
I kind of don't really feel like for the majority of people it will change much. There's a couple of things there. Like as Simon said, like you just like when you're building software, you build what you need to build because of the issues that exist. Like you should only solve problems that actually exist, right? There's no point changing your whole structure just because this other force came in for some time and has now gone. Like technically that problem has gone away. So if there was no problem in the first place, then you haven't really got anything to solve. But also, like, we're talking about like this group of people, this is like such a small section of the working population globally, you know, people who can afford to work at home because of their home situation, people who can just because of the nature of their role and stuff like this. So sure, like maybe some tech companies will start to be a little bit more distributed, but generally speaking, like I think it's a bit reactionary, a bit extreme to kind of change your whole policy, you know, based on something that has been really hard for people as well. There's loads of things, and like I'm definitely in the camp of, you know, being in a great place. So like being very lucky that I can work from home, and like I have enjoyed it, you know, very selfishly. But generally speaking, it's been really hard. So I think the major differences and the major changes would just be that when you do have people working remotely, so for this person that works in Paris, like we've all lived many, many days now in her shoes, you know, so we're way more sympathetic to her situation. So when she tells us, which she did every time, hey guys, can you turn the video on so I can see you? Now we really know how that feels, you know? So I think it would just change like how we collaborate online when we need to, but not necessarily increase the frequency.
Okay, yes. So I'm not sure about the time, Carlo, but I will give a chance to Stephen, Richard, and Cesar if they want to add something really brief. Yeah. Stephen,
just very briefly, and within tech, I think there's going to be an issue of retaining good talent. I'm fully expecting more people to request more working from home than they have previously. And so I think there's going to be a need for companies to adapt, simply because even if they didn't want to adapt, they want the right people, they want to retain the right people, and effectively, to a certain extent, they're going to get forced to.
I think further to that, further to that is definitely the kind of duty of care that I think will need if we kind of have more remote working. One of the things we observed was during the lockdown, people didn't seem to be taking holiday. It was like, you know, this kind of thing about like, you know, your days just blended together. The difference between work and home life eroded, completely gone. And I think we need to accept as businesses saying, you know, if somebody's having a bad time at home, probably having a bad time at work and vice versa. And we probably need to be sympathetic to that and actually be helpful in that particular situation, which is not a position companies, I think, are ready for or have found themselves in before. It's like, you know, you walk out of our, you know, there's very clear distinction, but it's been getting smaller and smaller and smaller to the point now where there is no difference. You know, so, you know, we're inviting people into our homes where we share it with our family. Now we're sharing it with our colleagues, with probably clients, all sorts of things, and that's quite a big thing to deal with. So I think that is the thing I think will need to change, probably a different, more sympathetic and holistic approach to how we actually look after our staff and what they actually need. And maybe also recognising the things like people not taking holiday. Maybe they're saving it up, so like, why do you want a holiday during a lockdown? Yeah, it's probably the best time to have some holiday because it's hard. You need that break. You need something to kind of different. And maybe we needed to require people to actually recognise that they need to look after themselves as well. Are we used to that? Do we have the management structures to do that? Do we have the awareness to do that? Do we have the training to do that? I'm not sure.
Thank you. Cesare, you?
Super quick, I totally agree with Stephen and Richard. One thing I don't think we will be able to forget is that, for example, WorkWave in New Jersey just built this beautiful office for 300 people. We can't forget about the investment. We need to find a way probably to still make some use of that asset. And I'm not expecting, even if we decide to remove all offices, which is impossible, obviously, I don't think we could find someone to rent it. So we'll have to see what to do with all these assets.
Yes. Carlo, please.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we're almost over in terms of like the time box we've got for today. So I really want to thank everyone. So all of our guest speakers today. Honestly, I thought I was quite prepared on the topic because I've learned a lot and thought a lot and talk a lot about this, but you did manage to kind of help me see it even from more perspective and unpack the topic even more. So I'm very confident lots of people have been listening. Also, they took things home, and hopefully this worked for you in terms of like learning from each other. So thanks again for being with us this morning. Thanks, Rui, for facilitating the conversation. And of course, thanks everyone for listening in via YouTube. So this has been streamed. It's also going to be recorded. So if you enjoyed the session, feel also free to share with your friends and peers. And that's it for us. We wish everyone a lovely rest of the day.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.